Global politics has once again reached a turning point. While Gaza screams in agony under the weight of bombardments and suffering, a familiar face re-emerges on the geopolitical chessboard. Donald, the former U.S. president, is once again making headlines, not just in America but across the Middle East this time. His focus is on an old ally, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the message he brings is far from soft. Donald isn't just advising, he's warning, he's pushing, and he's drawing lines that blur the difference between diplomacy and dominance. Through a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, Donald delivered a blunt and high-stakes message. His words carried the weight of an ex-president who still sees himself as a key player in world affairs. In his message, Donald advised Netanyahu to immediately finalize a ceasefire deal with Hamas, secure the release of hostages, and bring the region one step closer to peace. He said Netanyahu is currently negotiating a highly important deal with Hamas, one that involves not only the release of hostages but the potential restoration of peace across the region. But alongside that advice came a clear warning. Donald expressed deep frustration over ongoing judicial proceedings against Netanyahu and Israel, describing them not as justice but as political revenge. In his words, these court cases at this critical time are nothing more than politically motivated attacks. They threaten not just Israel's internal stability but also the future of the entire peace process in the Middle East. Donald was referring to the multiple corruption and abuse of power cases currently being pursued against Netanyahu in Israeli courts. These cases have been simmering for years, but Donald believes their timing now is deliberate, designed to sabotage Netanyahu's political influence when it matters most. Trump's frustration didn't stop at Israel's judicial system. He reminded the world, and more importantly, Israeli lawmakers, that the United States sends billions of dollars annually in aid to Israel. He strongly hinted that if Israeli institutions continue to undermine Netanyahu during sensitive international negotiations, then U.S. support, at least under his potential future leadership, may not remain unconditional. He said, "America gives Israel billions each year. We will not allow this kind of chaos to go unchecked, not when so much is at stake." This statement sent shockwaves through both the Israeli political establishment and international diplomatic circles. It raised urgent questions. Is Donald hinting at using American aid as leverage? Is he interfering in the internal affairs of a sovereign ally? Or is he genuinely worried about the collapse of a possible peace breakthrough? From Donald's perspective, the answer is simple. He believes that undermining Netanyahu during active negotiations with Hamas will derail the entire Middle East peace effort. He directly linked the situation in Gaza with ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran, stating that instability in Israel will hand over the advantage to Iran and terrorist elements across the region. Peace in Gaza, nuclear containment with Iran, and regional diplomacy, they're all connected, Donald argued. And destabilizing Netanyahu now is the same as sabotaging all three. According to him, any effort to weaken Netanyahu at this moment benefits Israel's adversaries Iran. Donald's logic is deeply rooted in his own foreign policy legacy. Throughout his presidency, he supported strongman leaders. Whether it was Putin, Kim Jong-un, or Netanyahu himself, his belief was always clear. Political strength at home equals diplomatic strength abroad. In this context, he views the court proceedings against Netanyahu as not just bad timing, but as a geopolitical disaster in the making. And to some extent, this logic holds ground. Netanyahu's position as prime minister gives him direct control over Israel's defense and foreign policy. If he is politically weakened or removed while negotiating hostage releases or ceasefire arrangements with Hamas, there's a real risk that those delicate negotiations could collapse. Donald's warning is essentially this: don't bring down your prime minister while he's trying to secure peace. But the counter-argument is also strong. Israel is a democracy, and in any functioning democracy, no one is above the law. Netanyahu is facing serious charges, including accepting bribes, fraud, and breach of trust. The Israeli legal system is moving forward with accountability, regardless of the timing. So the dilemma is real. Should Israel pause legal action in the name of diplomacy and regional peace? Or should it hold its leaders accountable, no matter what's at stake? Donald has already made his position clear. Diplomacy should come first. And to push his point, he invoked the Iran nuclear threat. He warned that if the current momentum for peace in Gaza is lost, Iran will be the first to benefit. He suggested that Iran is already watching Israel closely, and any internal chaos will be seen as a green light to ramp up nuclear ambitions. Donald believes the IAEA's ongoing negotiations with Iran would also suffer. In the Middle East, Donald said, nothing happens in isolation. If you weaken Israel's leadership, you strengthen its enemies. And in classic Donald style, he didn't shy away from leveraging his own influence. America won't just sit and watch. We invest too much in Israel financially and strategically to let it destroy its own stability from within. His message, while controversial, resonates with many who believe in a realpolitik approach. In other words, Trump doesn't care about appearances. He cares about results. And right now, he wants Netanyahu to stay strong and finish the deals. Yet critics are skeptical. Some see Donald's support for Netanyahu as a political tactic. After all, Netanyahu is a right-wing ally who shares ideological and strategic values with Donald. They both defy traditional diplomatic norms, both thrive on political disruption, and both have legal clouds hanging over their heads. Donald himself is facing multiple indictments in the US, and many see his defense of Netanyahu as a reflection of his own battle with the legal system. Still, there is no denying that Donald is back in the game, not just as a former president, but as an active influencer of global political decisions. In the past, Donald took credit for relocating the US embassy to Jerusalem, for pushing the Abraham Accords, and for increasing pressure on Iran through sanctions. Now, he wants to once again be seen as the man who understands the Middle East better than his successors. In his eyes, weakening Netanyahu right now is not just a legal move, it's a strategic blunder. And if Donald's words gain traction in Washington or Tel Aviv, it may shape how future decisions are made. And most importantly, will the fragile ceasefire talks in Gaza survive the internal chaos in Israel? One thing is clear. Donald is once again positioning himself as the guardian of order in a region teetering on the edge of chaos. As Donald's statements echo across the global stage, their impact is far-reaching and complex. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finds himself under immense pressure, both from within and beyond his country's borders. While dealing with the aftermath of Gaza's destruction and negotiating a fragile hostage deal with Hamas, Netanyahu is also entangled in multiple corruption and abuse of power cases that threaten his leadership. At this critical juncture, Donald has forcefully inserted himself into the equation, declaring that legal actions against Netanyahu are nothing but political revenge, and warning that such moves could jeopardize not only peace efforts in Gaza, but also the broader negotiations with Iran over its nuclear program. According to Donald, undermining Netanyahu now benefits Israel's enemies, particularly Iran, which he believes is watching closely, and may use Israel's internal instability as an opportunity to expand its nuclear capabilities and regional influence. Donald argues that Netanyahu is essential to maintaining order in the Middle East, and that weakening him during ongoing peace talks is a strategic blunder that could unravel years of progress. His critics, however, accuse him of meddling in the internal affairs of a sovereign ally and using the situation to revive his own political relevance, especially with the US elections on the horizon. Nevertheless, Donald continues to position himself as a global power broker, contrasting what he claims was a stable and secure Middle East during his presidency with the chaos he sees under current leadership. He reminds the world that under his administration, Israel felt emboldened, Iran was isolated, and peace agreements like the Abraham Accords flourished. His supporters see him as a voice of strength and clarity, while his opponents warn that his defense of Netanyahu undermines democratic institutions and the rule of law. Internationally, Donald's remarks have triggered mixed reactions. Iranian media portray them as Western hypocrisy. European diplomats express concern over derailed nuclear diplomacy, and Arab leaders quietly evaluate what a weakened Netanyahu or a resurgent Donald might mean for regional alliances. Within the United States, the divide is sharp. Republicans rally around Donald's decisive tone, while Democrats see his intervention as reckless and ultimately, Donald frames the issue as a battle between order and chaos, arguing that flawed leadership is better than no leadership when the stakes are this high. His call to delay justice in favor of immediate peace is strategic, but controversial. For those suffering in Gaza, justice delayed feels like justice denied. For Israelis who demand accountability, his stance seems like a betrayal. And for Iran, every moment of Israeli distraction is an opportunity to advance unchecked. As the situation unfolds, Netanyahu's political survival, the success of Gaza's peace talks, and the trajectory of Iran's nuclear ambitions all hang in the balance. Donald, no longer in office, still commands influence as if he were. His intervention is more than a show of loyalty. It is a calculated move to regain center stage in global affairs and to reassert the kind of hardline diplomacy that defined his presidency. Whether one agrees with his methods or not, his voice remains impossible to ignore.